Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. It's the start of a new week. It's going to be a busy week. We have the Rutherglen and Hamilton West by-elections. There'll be an awful lot of politicking on that as we make our way through to Thursday. There's other things that are due to happen. It's quite a busy news week, I think. Certainly got several stories I'd like to get through today. What I did notice, and what we're going to start with, is that Kate Forbes has given her first serious interview since the leadership election. And what she's ostensibly saying is that the Holyrood group as a whole basically is very parochial. It tends to concentrate particularly on the central belt and the sort of the orbiting satellites of that. It doesn't do much for the people of the more sparsely areas of the Highlands and Islands. And she's quite right. Because, of course, they tend to concentrate on where the votes are. And, of course, that's why the people of Aberdeen, for example, aren't really thought about, despite all the gas and, the oil and gas industry up there being so important. It's because they are a long way away. But that's only the ostensible reason, of course, for this interview. I think there is far more going on. I think there is it's almost a meta interview sitting atop. We will go into that as we do the piece. Anyway, let's go and look and see what Kate is saying. Here goes. Right, so there we are. Kate Forbes says Holyrood is letting down the Highlands, which is the headline there. Now, it's not just this one, because there was 3 different stories in 2 different papers, 2 different sources today. I've just chosen this one because it's the more sort of compressed story. It's a terser sort of reporting. But there are other stories, not just about her speech. And I just thought it was odd that there were so many stories all of a sudden, so many stories. But I'm going to choose this one. We'll do what she's saying because I think what she's saying is absolutely right. So we will go through what she's saying, but it's not what she's saying. If this is, it will make sense. It will make sense. But we'll go through because it's actually quite. She's quite right in what she's saying here. So, former Finance Secretary Kate Forbes has criticised what she regards as the profound levels of ignorance about the culture of the Highlands and Islands in Holyrood policy making. And she's right, these people never get out of the bloody central belt, do they? They just flip between Glasgow and Edinburgh and their homes. And they're all sort of central belt centric, unless they are actually representatives from the Highlands and Islands. And so most of the decisions that are being made for the people that live in that belt. Now, obviously, you've got to consider that it is an important decision-making for those people because there's so many of them. We get that. But they're doing that at the cost, I think, of leaving the Highlands, especially some of the more remote areas, out of their thinking. And some of these remote areas is where some of the worst poverty could be, because of lack of jobs and investment and things. And so they do need a little bit more consideration and help. But anyway, in her first significant interview since being narrowly defeated by Humza Yousaf in the SNP leadership contest, Ms Forbes says that the national policies often fail to recognise the specific and diverse needs of people who live in the Highlands. The MSP for Skye, Badenoch and Lochaber was speaking just days after the suspension of her friend and parliamentary colleague Fergus Ewing, who was sanctioned for being critical of party policy. Ms Forbes stood with Mr Ewing after he emerged from the meeting of his parliamentary colleagues which voted to sanction him. Now she's also critical of party policy. But isn't it telling that you've got these 2 MSPs, they both represent remote, sparsely populated areas in the Highlands and Islands, and they both seem to be more sane and more grounded than the people who are in the central belt. It's almost as though being up there and being closer to the people means that, you don't go insane with power or something. I don't know. It's odd, She said, Fergus is a living legend throughout the Highlands and Islands, and mainly because he always puts the need of these communities first. My concern was that he didn't stand alone going in or leaving that room. Our parliamentary group is a family and you must have each other's backs. And when you face difficult circumstances, you need your troops around you. That's a nice line, actually, Kate. That does go to show, I think, that, again, And I said this about Fergus. And it's people who are grounded, people who work hard for their communities. They don't necessarily follow the SNP party line. They represent their constituents. And I think that's certainly what Fergus done. And I think to some extent that's what Kate did. Although she didn't vote against Lorna Slater, which I think was a mistake from her part. And I suspect if it was run again, she probably would, to be fair. She says, if you asked any Highlander, they'd view this place as an entity before they see Scotland as an entity, she says. For centuries, people here have been denied democratic representation because they lived in an area where land ownership and political power were one and the same. Well, of course, yes. I mean, the Highlanders and the Lowlanders were very different, people, weren't they? The situation in Mallaig is very different from that in Fort William, and the needs of Dingwall and Glenfinnan are very different again, she says. Policies are never black and white, and I'm talking specifically about the highly protected marine areas. A green policy, as we know, which the likes of Fergus Ewing and Kate Forbes both voted against because they were concerned about their constituents. She says the irony of the policy is that every fisherman I've ever spoken with cares more about sustainable fishing than most politicians and civil servants. They don't just see it as a job, they see it as a multi-generational way of life. If there are no fish, then their kids don't have a future. But the SNP don't want to talk to the people who actually know what they're talking about, because they may learn something that may change their policy, and changing their policy indicates that they got something wrong. And they can never have anything wrong. She wanted to say, that's why the language, particularly used by fishermen around the island of Tiree, was to equate HPMAs with education. If you ban fishing and I lose my job, then we have to leave and the school closes. Once you lose a school, you lose all prospective families that may come to an area. And if you're trying to attract families to the local area, the first question they're asking is, where is the local school? If there's no school, they're more likely to settle elsewhere. Everything is connected. You have to look at this. Everything is holistic. You can't look at a single line. Nothing is linear. But of course, in the Central Belt, in the Holyrood Central Belt minded people, everything is linear because they have all these facilities to hand. Out in a remote area, everything is holistic. The old saying, it takes a village. And it truly does when you're out and you're remote. You rely on everyone else. That's how societies form. But of course the SNP are looking to break society, not create one. In the wide-ranging interview, Ms Forbes, who was attacked during her leadership contest for her opposition to gay marriage and saying having children outside of wedlock was wrong, which are exactly the same things that Humza Yousaf believes. He wouldn't even vote for gay marriage, would he? I know Kate was actually off because she was going through, she just had a baby. She was on, what do you call it? I can't think of the term. Post-pregnant, anyway, the maternity leave. Thank you, brain. She was on maternity leave, and whereas he made an excuse to avoid the voting on it because the mosque wouldn't like it. So for Humza Yousaf to attack her on religious issues is a bit strong, I think. Anyway, she said there's a voguish attitude which seems to think that if you close the educational attainment gap by making it easier for everyone, for example by doing away with algebra and dismantling the exam systems, but this can put working class children at further disadvantage when they need to compete for jobs and university places. Yet she's trying to say, no, you need to push children as well. That's the other thing. Don't level down, level up. It goes on and she says a few more things, and that's fine in there. But the question is, of course, this isn't an interview, is it? This isn't an interview. She's done. Well, like I said, there's sort of three different stories all about her today. I've just chosen this one as the example. All of a sudden, just before a by-election that the SNP are likely to lose, just before the party congress, and just after a very popular member of the party, Fergus Ewing, has been suspended by the party, up pops Kate Forbes, starting to do interviews, starting to raise her profile. Do we think that this is the start of a campaign? Do we think Kate Forbes is going to launch a leadership campaign against a failing leader who's got a loss of support, who cannot maintain discipline, and under whose control, and I use the word control quite, inappropriately there, but under whose leadership has seen some awful things happen to the party in terms of finances, numbers, reputation, everything. I think Kate is about to step up to the plate and put herself forward and go and take a run for leadership. I think she's going to have a challenge. I think she is going to challenge him. And I think she'll win. We shall have to keep an eye on this story. I honestly think it's the start of a Kate Forbes campaign. And it wouldn't be a bad thing. And it certainly will be an entertaining thing. So watch this space. Anyway, I'm going to round off and come up. So yes, you have to ask why. Why after 6 months? Why after so long a silence? Just before a by-election, just before the Congress, just after her friend is suspended, is Kate Forbes raising her profile, giving her interviews, stepping into other stories. Why? I think that this can be only one thing. And I think if anyone who doesn't believe that this is the start of a campaign, you may be right, but it's very suspicious, you've got to say. I think Kate Forbes is about to run. I think she's got the support. I think that even people who voted for Humza Yousaf to be leader in the first election, have seen the error of their ways, and I think we're going to see the challenge. And I can't bloody wait. It's going to be a very interesting Congress in a couple of weeks' time, isn't it? Anyway, I shall stop there. Thank you very much for watching. Do keep watching this story. I've a feeling this story will run and run. And I think it's going to be very, very... let's say just get the popcorn if it goes ahead. Because if this does, it will be a big story. Anyway, till then, thank you very much for watching. Stay safe, stay well, and remember, if we can get Humza out, we can get them all out. Bye.